Good evening, councillors, officers, members of the public in attendance and our viewers live streaming tonight's meeting. My name is Councillor Suzanne Newton. I'm the Mayor of Darebin City Council and the chairperson of tonight's meeting. It's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's council meeting. I declare this meeting open at 6:05 p.m. This meeting is a scheduled hybrid meeting, and so I welcome Councillor Messina and any member of the public who is attending online. The meeting is being live streamed and a recording will be made available on the council website as soon as practical after the meeting. Item 2 is the acknowledgement of traditional owners. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, the traditional owners of this land, and I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I recognise their continuing connection to land, water and culture. I'd like to introduce the councillors and senior staff who are with us this evening. Councillor Tim Lawrence, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Gaetano Greco. Sorry, hang on, I'll just pause. Councillor Messina, can you hear us? Sorry, I'm just going to pause while we get Councillor Messina's sound working. Can you hear us?
I can now hear you, Mayor. Thank you. I couldn't before.
Thank you. So we're on membership. So I've introduced Councillor Tim Lawrence, the Deputy Mayor. We have Councillor Gaetano Greco, Councillor Tom Hannon, Councillor Trent McCarthy, Councillor Lena Messina is with us online, Councillor Susan Rennie and Councillor Julie Williams will be with us in a few minutes. And our officers in attendance tonight are Peter Smith, the CEO, Kylie Bennett, the General Manager of Community, Anna Giampiccolo, the Acting General Manager of Customer and Corporate, Rachel Olivier, the General Manager, Infrastructure, Operations and Finance, Vanessa Petrie, the General Manager, City Sustainability and Strategy, and Anthony Smith, the Acting Manager, Governance and Communications. Item 3, apologies. We have no apologies tonight. Item 4 is disclosures of conflict of interest. Councillors and officers, are there any conflicts of interests or interests to declare? Ms Petrie?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a conflict of interest with an item I understand will be tabled as a petition this evening.
Thank you. We will get you to leave the room when we get to that item. Thank you. Do we have any other conflicts of interest or interests? No. Okay, so we'll go to, I'll just read. If any motion or amendment arises during the meeting that gives rise to a conflict of interest, I request that the councillor advise me at that time. We'll now go to item 5, which is the confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. Councillors, can I please have a mover for the adoption of the minutes of the council meetings held on the following dates? The ordinary meeting on the 18th of December 2023, the special meeting on the 8th of January, the special meeting on the 22nd of January, the special meeting on the 1st of February, the special meeting on the 12th of February, the special meeting on the 19th of February and the ordinary meeting of the 26th of February. Councillor Hannon and Councillor Rennie to second. I'll put that motion straight to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. And we will now go on to item 6, which is Council's occupational health and safety responsibilities.
Excuse me, Mayor, could you speak closer into the microphone because it sort of fades away? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Greco. Council has an occupational health and safety responsibility to ensure everyone attending tonight's meeting feels safe, both physically and emotionally. I would like to remind everyone in attendance to be respectful of each other, and as outlined in our governance rules, please note that councillors or any other person who addresses the meeting must do so in a courteous and respectful manner and must take direction from the chairperson whenever called on to do so. Item 7 is public question time. It's wonderful to have our audience back with us tonight. We will move on to public question time. We have 30 minutes for this section. If we exceed that time, I'll ask for a procedural motion to extend question time for another 30 minutes. In line with Council's governance rules, no questions will be taken from people in the gallery unless they submitted their questions by 12 noon today. You can only ask 3 questions and cannot speak for more than 2 minutes. Be mindful this is question time, so please only ask your question. Questions relating to notices of motion, petitions or urgent business will not be accepted in accordance with the governance rules. For members of the public who've registered to ask a question in person, I will call your name when it's time. If I call your name and you do not respond, I'll take it that you are not in the gallery and one of our officers, Jodie, will read the question on your behalf. The relevant General Manager will then provide a response. If you are in attendance, I'll invite you to come to the lectern to state your name and suburb and ask your questions. Like questions will be grouped together. The first person who submitted the like question can ask their question. So we will go on to the first question. So I've got anonymous submitters. Jodie, I'll go over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. The first two questions were from an anonymous submitter in relation to why do you require prior registration and photo ID for people to observe the council meetings? And does this restrict access to the meetings?
Thank you. I'll go to Anna for the response.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Normally, we wouldn't accept questions from anonymous submitters. However, we know that there has been some concern and a few queries about this from the community. So in the spirit of transparency, we're happy to answer the question and make a statement. As you can see, there is limited capacity in the council chamber. So to ensure community members can secure a seat, we have introduced a registration process. The registration form captures community members asking questions and making submissions or just purely coming along to view the meeting. This process is common practice across a number of councils. We do understand that the requirement to present ID has caused some concern for the community, and as such we've heard that feedback and we've removed that requirement from today and ongoing. In terms of access to meetings, we do live stream every meeting to ensure that community members who can't make it here to the gallery do have the option to watch from the comfort of their own home. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. We have a question from Hannah from Northgate who is not attending, so I'll go to Jodie for the question.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Hannah's question is, could the issue of graffiti, especially along High Street, please be addressed in the upcoming budget bid?
Thank you. I'll go to Rachel for the response.
Thank you, Hannah, for the question. So councillors have recently asked officers for advice about their options in regards to graffiti, and so that's officers are working through that at the moment. We'll bring it back to councillors soon, and I understand council's planning to consider that as part of establishing next year's budget.
Thank you, Rachel. Can I check if Anna is with us virtually? No. It's Anna of Northgate, and I'll get Jodie to read the question.
Thank you, Mayor. Anna has two questions. The first, on what basis was the proposal for the trial of new hard waste collection designed, as it does not reflect the findings of the community consultation report as promised and claimed? And her second question, by what rationale did councillors reject the amendment to the minutes put by Councillor Greco at the last meeting that freed up borrowing power if the government issued a grant for NARC costs be put to Reservoir Leisure Centre rather than the Bill Lowry Reserve, given the community sentiment on this issue?
Thank you. So I'll go to Vanessa for the answer to the first question.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you for the question, Anna. Information received from the community about Council's hard rubbish service was important in preparing a recommendation. Other information considered included community safety, findings from trials by other councils, and Council's waste and recycling strategy. The trial is planned for 2 years, and Darebin specific data can then be collected to inform a future ongoing service model.
Thank you. And I'll go to Kylie for the second question.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for your second question, Anna. This particular question is a matter for the Mayor and councillors. However, I do note that there is a paper on the RLC which forms part of the council agenda this evening.
Thank you. So the next questions are from Nino of Reservoir, but I believe he's not attending, so we will go to Jodie for questions.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Nino has three questions. When will council upgrade or redevelop Edwards Lake Boathouse? When will council upgrade or redevelop the main entrance at the corner of Edwards Street and Griffith Street? And when will council reinstate the original wrought iron Edwards Lake sign?
Thank you. I'll go to Rachel for all three questions.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Nino, thank you for the question. So council's got a commitment in its council plan to activate the boathouse through a lease. It's been working towards that. Its current 4-year capital works program plans for investment in that facility in the 25-26 financial year. So what's that? About 2 years away. At a council meeting in February, this year, Council decided to consider its options and next steps further as part of development of next year's budget. That draft budget development process is underway at the moment, and I'm anticipating the draft budget will be released for community consultation in late April, with a final budget decision in June this year. So we welcome any community feedback through that process. In regards to the main entrance at the corner of Edward Street and Griffith Street, and then also the original wrought iron sign, Council doesn't have plans for redeveloping the entrance or the iron sign. We've recently considered this suggestion alongside ideas and requests for improvements right across Darebin, and ultimately the assessment from officers is that other projects would be more important to do first. I don't expect that this project would be addressed as a highest priority for at least a few years, and choices about priorities are currently tough for Council. Council's absorbed very high construction sector inflation recently, and its budgets don't go as far as they used to.
Thank you. The next questions are from Max of Fairfield, who's not attending, so I'll go to Jody for his questions.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Max has 3 questions. The first is, what are Council's official plans to increase affordable housing and end homelessness? How are Council's plans to increase affordable housing and end homelessness coordinated with others, including nearby councils? And does Council know how many people are sleeping rough across the Darebin LGA?
Thank you. I'll go to Vanessa for the first 2 answers. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for the questions, Max. Council recognises that increasing affordable housing and ending homelessness requires action from all levels of government. Provision for social housing and support for homelessness is primarily a state government responsibility with the support of federal funding. Council is seeking to influence the planning system to facilitate more affordable housing and private developments, and by raising the issue through advocacy. This work includes working with the state government's development facilitation and big housing build programs to ensure major developments in Darebin provide sufficient affordable housing. Council is also preparing a new housing strategy and supply and demand strategy that will further encourage and stimulate housing affordability and diversity in our city. And in response to your second question, Max, Council's Advocacy Strategy 2022 to 26 calls on the state government to provide mandatory affordable housing controls and sustained and diverse funding streams for affordable housing. Council officers participate in regular meetings with colleagues in the M9 group of councils for a more powerful and united voice to the state. Council continues to advocate for funding to establish a Towards Zero program in Darebin, which would provide support for people experiencing or at risk of homelessness who present in Darebin. Council has allocated $80,000 to put towards this project, and Council is seeking a contribution of $70,000 from other sources.
Thank you. I'll go to Kylie for the third answer.
Through you, Mayor. Unfortunately, an estimated 1,500 people in Darebin are at risk of experiencing homelessness on any given night, which would include people who may be couch surfing, people living in rooming houses, cars, or on the streets and parklands. As mentioned by my colleague Vanessa, if Council is successful in gaining $70,000 from other sources to put towards Council's contribution of $80,000 to progress with Darebin Zero, more detailed information on people sleeping rough and their lived experience will be available, particularly given the Know by Name approach, which is a key part of this program. And Council hopes that this will improve support provided to people who are sleeping rough and ultimately reduce the number of people sleeping rough based on the experiences of other municipalities that have adopted similar approaches.
Thank you. The next questions are from Dean Hurlston of Council Watch, and we will go to Jody to read those questions.
Through you, Mayor. Dean has 3 questions. What amount of waste enforcement costs in the current financial year, 23-24, has Council included in its waste levies charged to residents, if any? What amount of revenue has Council included in the current financial year, 23-24, from waste enforcement actions? And has that revenue been offset in the waste levy or applied to Council's general revenue streams?
Thank you. I'll go to Rachel for all three answers.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the questions, Dean. Council didn't include any costs relating to waste enforcement in the waste levies for residents. It also didn't include any revenue relating to waste enforcement in the waste levies for residents, and therefore, instead, both the costs and revenue side of that function are included within Council's general revenue and expenses lines.
Thank you. We will now go to Liz of Thornbury, who's not attending, so Jodie will read her question.
Through you, Mayor. Which councillors have marched in the Midsummer Pride March in support of the LGBTIQA+ community?
Thank you. We'll go to... Oh, sorry, there's more, isn't there? Go ahead.
Excuse me. Could Council please provide an update on the development of its community flag schedule and when this will be presented to Council? And will Council's sporting fees, charges and occupancy agreement policy be updated to incorporate gender equitable access and use policies as required under the Victorian Government's Fair Access Policy Roadmap and replace outdated terminology such as GLBTIQ?
Thank you. I'll go to Kylie for all three answers.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for your questions, Liz. The Midsummer Pride March is an annual event and one way Darebin councillors and staff can show their support for the LGBTIQA+ community. Many Darebin councillors and staff have marched in the Pride March in this year and in previous years, either with Darebin Council but also with other participating organisations in the march. In 2024, Mayor Newton and Councillor Hannon participated in the Darebin Council contingent, and other councillors are more than likely to have marched with other organisations also. With respect to question 2, the community flag policy is in development and will also include a draft schedule, and that'll be considered by Council at a future meeting. In terms of the third question, Council will be reviewing and updating its policy in due course, with a particular focus on incorporating gender-inclusive terminology and focus to ensure alignment with the Fair Access Policy Roadmap. Council is committed to gender inclusion, and this is demonstrated through Council's performance subsidy focus for sporting clubs and the recent but not yet finalised review of Council's outdoor sports infrastructure framework.
Thank you. Marlene from Northcote, I believe you're here in person, so please come to the lectern and ask your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm a part of Melbourne Zero, which is a movement to end rough sleeping by 2030. Between 1994 and 2000, all 14 of Victoria's standalone psychiatric hospitals were closed. This was all part of a worldwide movement to deinstitutionalise mental health care and get people back into the community. Unfortunately, insufficient services were provided. As a consequence, many people ended up on the street or in jail. Recently, in Station Street, Fairfield, a man set up his camp outside the vacant shop of what was the Fairfield Medical Centre. As time went on, he accumulated more and more stuff around him. What is Council policy in this situation? Where can people like him go?
Thank you, Marlene, for your question. I'll go to Kylie for the answer.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for your comments and questions, Marlene. Council has an assertive community outreach program for people who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness, and Council allocates around $370,000 per annum for that particular service. The service is delivered by Merry Outreach Support Services, and the program consists of specialist outreach workers who can visit and respond to rough sleepers and connect them to services they need, including housing and healthcare. There is information on the Assertive Community Outreach program on Council's website, and we can certainly make that information available to you. As mentioned in other answers tonight, Council is also continuing to advocate for funding to establish a Darebin Zero program, which alongside of the Assertive Outreach program would strengthen further Council's support in that regard.
I'm just wondering who I can go to get this information in writing. That's what I'd like.
Through you, Mayor, if you would like to leave your contact details with our governance team, with Jodie, they'll come and see you in a break, and we can make sure that we get that information to you.
Thank you so much. Great.
Thank you. Our next questions are from Rachel of Preston, and I'll get Jodie to read the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Rachel has 2 questions. When will the glass recycling program with the designated bin that was announced more than 2 years ago be implemented? And 2, if plans have changed and there is no longer going to be a glass recycling program, what will the additional fees that were charged for this recycling service in last year's rates be spent on?
Thank you. I'll go to Rachel for the answers to both.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Rachel, for the question. So Council's looking at implementing the state government's announced glass recycling program by 2027. Council hasn't charged any additional fees or charges for a glass recycling service to date. Part of the reason that we're taking a couple of years before introducing the glass service is because we're mindful of the additional costs that would be borne by residents. In the meantime, we encourage people to participate in the recently introduced container deposit scheme. Certainly high levels of participation in that scheme will help keep recycling costs low, and they'll also help us design a future glass service that can be as cost effective as possible.
Thank you, Rachel. We'll now go on to Hunter from Preston, who is attending in person. Would you like to ask your questions? Thank you.
So my first question is regarding a question I made late last year at a prior council meeting regarding when the youth hub would return to a bare minimum and hopefully more 6 p.m. finish time rather than the 5 p.m. finish time on Friday evenings, as had been the case up till last year, and now that the new staff have been hired. This would benefit 18 to 25-year-olds who are currently underrepresented at the hub, and what progress has been made towards that since I last that question several months ago. My second question's sort of been answered a couple times here, so I'll just go to the second part of that question. I've been told by people that, some other homeless people in the community, that the Northcote Aquatic Centre doesn't do showers to homeless people like Reservoir does, and I'm just wondering when that could be changed potentially, because it would be a simple thing to do, I'd imagine. And what is Darebin Council doing to address land banking, particularly concerning privately owned, unused, vacant plots of land, houses and businesses that potentially idly take up space, gaining value for years, despite a major cause of current housing and rental crisis being due to a lack of housing supply, when we have so much unproductive land simply gaining value, while homelessness soars, which is simply unfair.
Thank you, Hunter. I'll go to Kylie for the answer to both.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Hunter, for your questions. And through you, Mayor, the reduced service hours at the hub have been a result of reduced workforce capacity, but I am pleased to confirm that following a successful recruitment and onboarding process in late 2023 and early 2024, the service is now fully staffed. As a result, from the start of Term 2, the service hours at the hub will increase from 5 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Tuesday to Friday. I understand that historically the hub closed at 5 p.m, except for a short period of time in 2022 when the hub was open until 6 p.m, when reopening after the COVID lockdowns. The increase from a 5 p.m closure to a 5:30 p.m closing time is in line with feedback previously received from young people and also a review of the service hours. I know that the Youth Services team is really excited to be able to extend their reach to support young people in our community. In terms of question 2, obviously we do provide the Assertive Community Outreach Program, which is available. With respect to community shower access, the program is currently available at RLC and Narrandjeri Stadium, and Council is working on plans to expand at other council-owned venues.
Thank you. And I'll go to Vanessa to answer the question about land banking.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Thanks again for the question, Hunter. While land banking tends to be an issue in the outer suburban areas, there are a range of other mechanisms that Darebin Council is actively examining to address the housing crisis. And it's also worth noting that the Victorian Government has introduced a vacant residential land tax. So Council is currently working on a housing demand and supply study, and at this stage we plan to undertake consultation on this later in the year, and we're keen to hear from people about issues that are impacting them and seeking ideas for the ways that Council can actively contribute to boosting supply.
Thank you. The next questions are from Rebecca of Preston, and I'll ask Jodie to read the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Rebecca has 3 questions. What is required for Council to establish a community reference group and community consultation process to improve A.G. Davis Wood Street Park in line with the petition previously submitted by 149 people? What would the timeline be for this, and how do we secure a budget for upgrades?
Thank you. I'll go to Rachel for the response.
Hi, Rebecca, and thank you for the questions. I'll answer them together. The petition I know you referred to in your question, I do want to, it was a very comprehensive request and vision for the park. Thank you. And I can say that I know our team have contacted you with details about several small improvements that have been and will be made, and that these go towards the aspiration you've got for the park. I understand the team have also explained that we are intending to leave some elements the same and the reasons for this, and I trust that assists. In regards to major redevelopment, Council doesn't have plans for major redevelopment nor the associated consultation at A.G. Davis Park. Our current plans focus on keeping place spaces in good condition rather than on major upgrades. There are 130 place spaces across the city that we're looking after, and we've absorbed very high construction sector inflation. It means that our works budget doesn't go as far as it used to. That said, every year Council does consider its priorities across all its open spaces, sporting grounds and community facilities every year when it develops its budget. I am expecting some minor works at A.G. Davies to be proposed in the draft budget. The draft budget will be released for community consultation in late April, and we'd welcome any community feedback.
Thank you. We got Darren in person. Darren, please come up to the lectern and ask your questions. Thank you.
Yes, I feel very privileged to be here with you all and to see this democratic process. I just wanted to say something which is probably a little bit sort of ahead of where we're at with the petition. Really, what it was, in all fairness, that if Craig Bishop is successful, would Geet from Farnwell and myself from Hector Heritage, right, a French polisher, also, in fairness, be transported over the line with him? That's all the question was.
Thank you. And we'll go to Rachel for the answer.
Darren, thanks for the question. It is a very specific situation, and so we will need to take the specific question on notice and contact you later in the week. The thing I thought might be helpful to clarify is that if a petition is accepted in a council meeting, that doesn't mean the decision on the matter has been made. That happens at a different time, either at a future council meeting or by being referred to the CEO.
Thank you. And I've got Ruth attending in person. Please come and ask your questions.
Thank you, Mayor Newton. I'm only going to ask my second and third questions tonight because my first question was thankfully answered by a council officer today. So following the successful Ride to School Day events in Darebin on Friday, will council review its abandonment of the Octopus Schools program, a decision that arguably goes against council's transport strategy, and commit to investing in safety infrastructure around schools to encourage school students to cycle, scoot and walk to school? And my last question is, during Your Street, Your Say Group A consultation in Thornbury West, many community members commented about safety issues with through traffic on Hutton Street next to Thornbury Primary School, which indicates that parents fear for the safety of their children when cycling, scooting and walking to school in this area. Why were these community concerns ignored and no safety improvements proposed for Hutton Street in Your Street, Your Say Group A?
Thank you. I'll go to Vanessa for those answers, but just before we do, can I get an extension of time? Moved by Councillor Rennie, seconded by Councillor Hannan. All those in favour? Great, that's carried unanimously. So we'll go on to Vanessa for the answers.
Through you, Mayor, thanks for your questions, Ruth. So grant support from the state government has made it possible for council to continue delivering the Octopus Schools program, and we're currently providing 3 schools with support this year through that state government support. And the focus of the program is on behaviour change and school activities with infrastructure identification delivered through council's Your Street, Your Say program. Regarding your second question, to address safety concerns around Thornbury Primary School, council has constructed a raised crossing at Raymond and the Hutton Street intersection, refreshed line marking at the children's crossing, and advocated to the Department of Transport and Planning for a countdown timer at the Hutton Street, St George's Road crossing, and to improve St George's Road cycling corridor. And they're both key advocacy priorities for 22 to 26 in council's advocacy strategy.
Thank you. Our next question is from Marion of Pascoe Vale, and Jody will read the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Marion has 3 questions. The first is about the Youth Citizens Jury. The 26th of February council meeting agenda contained annual reports from most of council's advisory committees, but not the Young Citizens Jury. Is an annual report for the Young Citizens Jury activities of 23 going to be submitted to council, or has the status of this advisory committee been altered? Question 2, regarding apologies and requests for leave of absence. Council's governance rules do not have any provisions about how councillors should submit a request for leave of absence. Has this been delegated to the Chief Executive Officer to approve requests for leave? And question 3 is about the overarching governance principle of transparency and agenda item 9.5. Are councillors satisfied that the overarching governance principles will be fulfilled if council joins the M9 consortium contract for e-scooters?
Thank you. So I'll go to Kylie for the answer about the Young or Youth Citizens Jury.
Through you, Mayor. Marion, thank you for your question. The Young Citizens Jury Terms of Reference does not include councillor representation following the review of the Darebin Youth Advisory Committee and the subsequent establishment of the Young Citizens Jury in 2017. The recommendation from young people at that time was to not have councillors on the jury to ensure young people could freely express their views. Unfortunately, a report from the jury was not available for inclusion in the recent advisory committee report due to operational issues, but we will make sure that that's included as part of the next reporting period.
Thank you. And I'll go to Anna for the questions about leave of absence and about governance for e-scooters.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the questions, Marion. So for the second question, currently there isn't a prescribed process in our governance rules. The current process has been to advise the CEO, who will note and record the leave request. We are reviewing this process against the Local Government Act and will brief Council in due course. With respect to question 3, thanks again for this question. We would consider the governance principles in advising Council if and when Council does choose to go ahead with e-scooters through the M9. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll go to Brian from Preston, who is in the audience. Brian, please come to the lectern.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question, but I want to make a statement to this council, and I'd really crave your indulgence so that I can make it. I'm committed to the sacred principles of democracy, which I imbued at my mother's breast and my father's arms.
Brian, can you move to your question, please?
Thank you for indulgence, Mayor. The question I have to ask is this. At the last council meeting, I lodged 3 questions intended for Mayor Newton, that is you, Mayor Newton. Prior to the meeting, I was informed by email by Council Officer Rebecca Papulius that the Mayor had disallowed the questions. Mayor Newton, were you or the CEO, Peter Smith, informed prior to the meeting what the contents of the questions was?
I'll go to Anna for that answer.
Thank you, Mayor, through you, and thanks, Brian, for the question. All public questions must adhere to the governance rules before they are permitted. I understand that a member of my team explained the reason why your questions weren't permitted and also offered assistance to help rephrase your questions.
Thank you.
That's
and we'll go to John from Epping.
Well, I haven't finished yet. As I said, I crave your indulgence, Mayor. Do I not have it?
Mr Sanigan,
hang
we've
on,
only
just a
had
moment.
one question
You're a very
put
inexperienced
forward.
Mayor. I crave your indulgence.
So, Mr Sanigan, we've only had one question put forward, and we
Well, maybe
do
make this
need
the second one.
to
Can I
keep
say
to
this?
time.
Can I say this? In relation to my feeling, my conviction for democratic rights, I will be.
Mr Sanigan, I'll ask you to resume your seat.
I will be nominating for the West Ward.
Mr Sanigan, I'll ask you to resume your seat.
Council elections. Now
Mr Sanigan, I'll ask you to resume your seat, please. Mr Sanigan, I'll ask you to resume your seat.
That is a
Mr Sanigan, I need you to stop speaking or I will have to ask you to leave. Could you please resume your seat?
Why don't you ask me to leave?
Mr Sanigan, could you please resume your seat?
Will you ask me to leave?
Mr Sanigan, please resume your seat.
Will you ask me to leave?
Yes, I'm asking you to leave.
Thank you. Goodbye.
John, would you like to come to the lectern, please? Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Mayor, I was told on the way down at 5:10 that my questions were invalid. One was that I was trying to embarrass council. No, I think these things should be brought up. But before I go into it, I want to read a statement to you people. It concerns what's happened
Mr Nugent, I'm sorry that we unfortunately can't hear statements. Would you like to move to your questions, please?
All right. Well, we're going to have a meeting. I think I'm having a meeting with Peter Smith. Okay, I'll ask my questions now.
Thank you.
Okay, first question. Mayor, on the 26th of February 24, I submitted a question to Council. Why is Council killing off democracy and transparency in Darebin? This question was only part answered. Mayor, could you please answer the question in full with the following examples of giving? You can only ask 3 questions. Previously at council meetings, you could ask as many questions as you liked. No follow-up with officers when answers are given. There is no chance to talk with councillors at council meetings. Questions are vetted before council meetings. No question from the floor. This was a right taken away from us 18 months ago and there's been no reinstatement yet. Council don't always answer the question, they just give you spin. Unable to speak to senior managers at meetings. Council do not work with the public.
John, could you move to your second question? We're just running short on time.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Even though we've got 25 minutes left. Okay, not a problem. No. Mayor, the question I want to know, how will council bring back democracy and open transparency to the city?
Sorry.
My second question, Mayor, is could you please advise why the residents and ratepayers and general public have such a poor or low opinion of this council? Is it because of the following? Services partly or not delivered?
Mr. Nugent, I'll have to ask you to move to your third question, please, just so we can get a response for you.
Well, this is a question. You're killing my time for democracy. This is what I'm not getting at.
Mr. Nugent, could you move to your third question, please?
Can I ask why? When I haven't given the question?
We're running out of time and we need to be able to provide you a response.
You've got 24 minutes left of your question times.
Mr. Nugent, you have 2 minutes to ask your questions and we are counting that time down. So we need you to ask to your third. Could you go to your third question,
can
please?
I go back to my second? Because this is only a small question, the third one.
If you could go to your third question, that would be much appreciated.
The question I'm asking, can I finish off my second question if I ask my third question quickly?
Sure.
It's a yes or a no?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, Mayor. This is a little bit touchy. This question was, Mayor, I asked the question at the last council meeting. Coming to this council meeting for 26 or 20 odd years, I know how council rate pavilions and so forth, how they charge. My question is, will council introduce a new performance subsidy program before the winter season, which doesn't discriminate against junior boys clubs and not charge another $2,500 for a 2-club team?
Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Nugent, and I believe that our CEO will answer at least one of them.
Thank you.
Thank you through you, Mayor. Thank you for your questions, Mr. Nugent. Your first question is around democracy and transparency and your concerns about the governance rules. Governance rules are approved by council and all questions, including the time allocated for people to ask questions, make submissions, are contained within those governance rules. I understand that for the next council there'll be a review of the governance rules, so that'd be an excellent opportunity for you to put forward your ideas about how democracy and transparency can be improved at Darebin City Council, and we'll make sure you know the timing of that. I believe it'll be in the next council term. You've asked around the residents, ratepayers and public view of council. Interestingly, tonight in the governance report there is a report back on the local government survey which explains council's response. It explains the opinions of ratepayers and residents taken across many councils. That response is in the governance report tonight. I'll draw your attention to that. It includes some actions that council are undertaking to respond to the feedback they've received through that survey.
Excuse me, Mr. Smith.
So I'll just finish my question, please.
Mr.
You may answer, Mr. Nugent. And as I said to you before, if you need further, I'm happy to have a meeting with you and give you further time. Just in relation to your third question around subsidies for sports, council's upcoming budget process will look at sporting fees, and that will probably open at the end of April for submissions, and you're more than welcome to put a submission to council on how you see subsidies being applied to sporting groups. So I believe I've answered all three questions, and as I said through you, Mayor, I'm happy to meet with Mr. Newton if he wants further information.
Thank you. And we'll go to Kath for your question. I believe you're here in person. Kath in the front. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mayor, and it's very nice to be able to be here in person and present this. As a Preston resident who suffers from asthma, I'm horrified to see Cleanaway's proposal to build and operate for decades to come an industrial incinerator to burn 380,000 tonnes of industrial demolition and residential waste per year in Woolert, which I didn't realise is just 16 kilometres from my home. This horrible proposal, as well as having impacts on our air, is just 10 kilometres from Yan Yin, our drinking water source. And although it's labelled waste energy, it's an extremely polluting and inefficient means of energy production. Just last September, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Toxics and Human Rights visited here in Melbourne and spoke to numerous communities who are facing this threat. He said incineration imposes heavy health and other costs on local communities and is a significant source of greenhouse gases.
Kath, we just need you to move to the question.
I'm going to the question, and it's been reported that even the most modern incinerators produce dioxins and toxic ash. Can council, I've got three questions. Can council confirm they will not allow any rubbish from Darebin to go to industrial incinerators? Is the first question. I know that's part of policy, but I'm asking for confirmation of that policy. And the second question is, will council prepare an EPA submission expressing the harms to Darebin residents of this planned incinerator? And this would be in line with the stated policy against waste-to-energy incinerators on page 9 of the Waste and Recycling Strategy. This EPA submission process has been hugely rushed and has become needing to happen quite soon, as the submissions are due on April 14. So it's been hidden from most of the public. The information process has been poor, so there's been very poor knowledge in the community to respond to that submission process. And my third question is, will council agree not to contract Cleanaway for any services if they continue to pursue this proposal?
Thank you, Kath. I'll go to Vanessa for a response.
Thank you very much, Kath, for your questions. And I acknowledge that while they were emailed to us before 12 p.m, we unfortunately haven't been able to respond to them. So one of my team will return to you this week. And may I ask, just make sure that we have your details. If you could share them at the break with Jodie of our governance team, so we can get back to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. That now concludes public question time. So our next item is submissions. Council's governance rules permit members of the public to register to address an ordinary council meeting in relation to matters listed on that agenda. Thank you to those people who've registered their intention to do so. Prior to the relevant agenda item, those people who've registered to make a submission will be invited to come forward one by one to address council. In accordance with our governance rules, submissions can't be made in relation to notices of motion and urgent business. And we've received one request to make a submission tonight to agenda item 9.4, and I now call on Matthew Zammit to make his submission. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Matthew Zammit. Both my parents were born in Malta. I'm a Maltese citizen. I live in Thornbury, and I'm speaking on agenda item 9.4, Reservoir Leisure Centre. Here's some background. A report titled East Reservoir, Strategies for Improving Community Health and Wellbeing was tabled at this council on 6th of April 2022. And during the later debate, I note, Mayor, that commentary was drawn from this report as follows. A 50-metre pool is not recommended as an option, and what the report talks about is that there are many new migrants in the area who may not have experienced swimming before. I've read that entire report numerous times, and I cannot find any reference to new migrants in the area who may not have experienced swimming before, especially as being the reason that a 50-metre pool is not recommended. It's just not in there. So I submit that this commentary should be retracted and disregarded at the agenda item or any consideration of Reservoir Leisure Centre. And in any case, a person's country of birth should never be used as the reason to deny anyone a council service or amenity. It is wrong to make blanket assumptions about the skills of everyone in a particular group based on their country of birth or their migrant status. The law makes this clear in the Racial Discrimination Act of 1975 at Section 9. And the former Victorian Multicultural Commissioner who lives in Preston likened all this to suggesting that those who have no literacy aren't ready to have a library in their community. And he's not alone. Many who I've spoken to in our wonderful, inclusive and diverse Darebin community have rejected the premise that race or migrant status be used to deny the reservoir community a 50-metre pool. As the former Multicultural Commissioner went on to say, don't suggest that our new and emerging communities have no use of the same facilities as other parts of the city. This is called being racist.
Thank you, Matthew, for that submission. We'll now go on to item 8, petitions. Councillors, I understand we have 3 petitions this evening, starting with Councillor Greco on a petition about Donath West Reserve. Councillor Greco, I'll go over to you for this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a petition in relation to Donath West Reserve, and I'd like to thank Mr. Nugent for putting forward this petition. I seek to table the petition, Pathways on Donath West Reserve, to be referred to the CEO for consideration and response. The petition has been signed by approximately 125 people and complies with the Council's governance rules. The petition reads as follows. We, the undersigned, believe and request that the use of pathways on Donath West Reserve to be included in the 2024-2025 budget. This includes the completion of the pathway on Number 1 Oval along its western boundary to the northern boundary of the parks, then along the northern boundary to where it meets the seal pathway. There was also a diagram that was lodged with the petition which better explains in words what the petition is about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. And I would like to call on Mr. Nugent as a submitter of the petition. You have 2 minutes to make a submission. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to just say that this pathway would complete Donath West. Unfortunately, on our western boundary, around the round oval Number 1 has not been completed. It's just half a cement for a footpath and so forth, and the rest of it is just a unsealed level, which detracts from the park. I was told that it was going to be all sealed and so forth, and then eventually work to take the pathway up to the tennis courts, along the side of the tennis courts where people do play and so forth. Plus, people can stand on that pathway and watch people play netball, because that also encroaches on the netball and so forth. And along the northern boundary, I have received correspondence and telling me that it's an unsealed part, but when you walk along it, the sealed part is only about sometimes only 8 inches across, and that's not a sealed pathway and so forth. I would highly recommend to this council to put this in the 24-25 budget, so to complete the Donath Reserve. A lot of work was done by this my junior footy club, the Keon Park Stars, and this would just complete the pathways completion where people can walk their dogs, run, do everything there and so forth. Anyway, thank you for your indulgence, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Nugent. We will now go on to another petition to be tabled by Councillor Greco. Over to you.
Mayor Newton, do we vote on this petition first before we move on to the next one?
Do we need to vote? Thank you, Councillor Greco. We don't generally vote on petitions. They're tabled to the CEO. So I'll go on to your second petition, please.
Okay, and thank you, Mayor Newton. I have another petition which has been given to me, and I thank Mr Hunter Cullen for allowing me to present this petition. I seek to table a petition concerning requiring pre-registration and photo ID for Darebin Council meetings and call for a report on the subject matter of the petition. The petition has been signed by approximately, I believe, 17 people and complies with the Council's governance rules. The petition reads as follows.
Apologies, Councillor Greco. I believe that we've lost the live stream, so I'll just ask you to pause while we work to get Councillor Messina back in the meeting and resume the live stream. So just bear with us.
I can hear you.
Thank you, Lena. So thank you, Councillor Messina. I think we're checking if the live stream is working. Just for an update, we've lost visual on the live stream, so they can hear audio but not visual, but we need to be able to see that all councillors are in the room or in the virtual room. So we'll make a 5-minute adjournment and we'll try to figure out the visuals. So please bear with us. We're taking a 5-minute adjournment. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have a copy of those two too. Oh, come on, I think that's outrageous.
Councillors, please resume your seats. Councillors, I'll just get you to resume your seats, and we have the tech working, so huge thank you to the IT and the governance team for that. Can I check that we're on the live stream? We're good to recommence? Great. Councillor Greco, I am sorry. We do generally vote on petitions. I believe the governance rules say may, but it is our practice to vote on it, so I apologise about that. We'll just wait for... Can I check, have we got Councillor Messina in the meeting just before we formally start? She's not on, Councillor Messina's not on the screen, so we'll just see if we can, are we able to call Councillor Messina and just let her know that we've resumed? I'll just give that a minute to see if Councillor Messina rejoins. Okay, we do have quorum, so I'll recommence the meeting, and the staff are calling Councillor Messina to see if she can rejoin the meeting soon. So we'll go back to the first petition about Doneth West Reserve. So Councillor Greco, we've heard what you're seeking to table. Are you happy to move the petition be tabled? Yes, the first one, the Doneth West Reserve. And do we have a seconder, Councillor Rennie? All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Councillor Greco, I'll just get you to go back to the start of the second petition, just because I'm not sure when we lost audio visual. So yeah, if you could go back to the start for the second petition, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Newton. Again, this is a petition by Mr. Hunter Cullen, who is here present tonight, and the petition is in regards to the requirement for pre-registration and photo ID for Darebin council meetings. So I seek to table a petition concerning that subject matter and call for a report on the subject matter of the petition. The petition has been signed by approximately, I believe, 17 people now and complies with the council's governance rules. But the petition reads as follows. It's a lengthy petition, but I think it's well worth a read, and definitely well worth hearing it out. It reads as follows. We, the undersigned, are deeply concerned by Darebin Council's recent decision to require pre-registration and photo identification for attendance at council meetings. We believe this decision poses a threat to the democratic rights of all citizens, particularly those from marginalised groups such as Indigenous Australians, people experiencing homelessness and financial disadvantage, people with disabilities, migrants and minors under 18 years old. The requirement for pre-registration and photo ID mirrors the discriminatory issues associated with voter ID laws, which have been widely criticised for disproportionately disenfranchising marginalised communities. Just as we do not mandate IDs for voting in Australian elections to ensure equal access to the democratic process, attendees of local council meetings should not be subjected to such barriers. Furthermore, this decision comes in the aftermath of online council sessions justified by safety concerns stemming from protests and sensitive topics in earmarks. While we acknowledge the importance of safety measures, it is crucial to emphasise that protesting is a fundamental democratic right. The reported protests remained non-violent, and the council possesses the necessary resources, including security personnel, to manage any disruption without resorting to restrictive measures which impact everyone and which disproportionately impact marginalised groups. We believe that any adjustments to democratic practices, such as the imposition of ID requirements, should not be made lightly or without transparent justification. Granting emergency powers without clear guidelines sets a dangerous precedent. Therefore, we call on Darebin Council to retract its decision to mandate pre-registration and photo ID for attendance at council meetings. We further call on Darebin Council to uphold the democratic principles of inclusivity, accessibility and accountability. We urge the Council to prioritise the rights of all citizens, safeguarding democratic participation for present and future generations. And finally, let us stand together to protect our fundamental rights and ensure that democracy remains robust and inclusive for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. We don't need to clap. We will go to the submission first from Hunter, who's in the audience, and then we'll go to the vote to accept the petition. So Hunter, we'll hear from you. You've got 2 minutes.
Thanks, Councillor Greco, for tabling this petition on short notice. So this initiative constitutes a direct encroachment upon one of our community's long-standing democratic liberal freedoms. Any action, no matter how seemingly insignificant, that erode our liberal rights demand us citizens to provide an act of defence. Instead of allowing our rights to be diminished, we must actively strive to strengthen and safeguard them from those in power. There are many issues with requiring photo ID as it directly discriminates against our most vulnerable members in our community, such as Indigenous Australians, those experiencing homelessness, financial disadvantage, domestic violence survivors, people with disabilities, migrants and minors. Everyone deserves to be present at council meetings, as has been the long-standing position of council. Just an hour before today's meeting, I was informed that the photo ID requirement would be revoked, likely as a result of this petition, which is most definitely a win for those who have signed this petition. It still does put into question the motives behind the original position, and those decision makers must now deal with the consequences of eroding trust in the community. Requiring pre-registration is still required, however, and there's questions as to why this was implemented now and hasn't been the case prior. Justification such as venue capacity limitations does not completely hold up, as many meetings as of late have been sufficiently accommodated in the town hall. Why should this not continue? This petition acknowledges that safety and security of citizens is important, however it is at odds with democratic liberal principles. It is paramount that any decisions to temporarily revoke rights have sufficient justification, timeframes, guidelines, and be proportional to the risk, which we do not believe has been the case in this instance. On a final note, some members of the community have mentioned about Matic lawyers being involved and their community concerns about conflicts of interest on this. We hope you take this petition and reform policies in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Hunter. We'll now move to table the petition. Councillor Greco, would you like to move? And Councillor Lawrence to second. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I'll go on to a petition to be tabled by Councillor Rennie. Over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I seek to table a petition concerning support for an electric vehicle hub in Alphington to be referred to the CEO for consideration and response. The petition has been signed by approximately 1,315 people and complies with Council's governance rules. The petition reads as follows. Craig Bishop, owner of Evolution Automotive, is establishing Australia's first EV hub in Alphington. His EV hub would convert petrol and diesel vehicles to electric and would also include charging stations, e-bike sharing and more. This proposal aligns with Darebin Council objectives and presents an exciting innovation for Darebin to show leadership on the climate emergency. However, his proposal to Darebin Council was rejected for undisclosed reasons, and Craig has been served notice to vacate his premises at the former Melbourne Innovation Centre by the 30th of April 2024. We, the undersigned concerned citizens, request that Darebin Council 1. Recognise Craig's innovations as exciting and beneficial to the community and council. 2. Conduct a full and transparent review of his proposal. And 3. Extend his lease until this matter is fully resolved. I would like to commend and say thank you to the residents involved, and I have a good wad of signatures here. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. We will call on Emily as the submitter of the petition to speak for 2 minutes, and then we'll vote to table this petition. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you. Hi. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I'm just putting my water bottle away. I'm Emily Castle. I've been a resident of Alphington for approximately 33 years. I've known Craig for 25. This petition is not a petition are us or a petition. They're genuine people, genuine interests in creating an environmental hub at the Darebin Enterprises facility. Just as a tiny bit of background, because I'm very conscious of the 2-minute rule, Craig is a much-loved businessman within the community. His business has 2 elements. One is mechanic and one as an innovator. So what, and has already been said, so what Craig does is he fits existing cars with electric motors. So, and that's very exciting for us, and it's very exciting for our community. And I think it's also been hugely beneficial to the community, as well as council, of course. Our concerns are in relation to Craig's rejection of his application, was that there were a number of processes that I don't necessarily know. Well, so no, I won't say that. There were the processes themselves. And I do believe we didn't receive any reasonable responses to the pushback of the actual submission made. I believe that...
10 seconds.
10 seconds?
Thanks, Emily.
Okay, well, I'm just going to read out something from my notes. Okay, what we want is, our requests are as follows. Need glasses for that. Craig and ourselves be allowed to meet with you to put his case in detail. Council, including yourselves, obviously, conduct a full and transparent review of this proposal. Ensure that his proposal and its environmental impacts be fully considered and discussed before any final decision is taken. Extend his lease until this matter is fully resolved. And meanwhile, that the council genuinely engage with these questions, because a very strong number of constituents see Craig's innovations, and they are, as exciting and beneficial to the community and council. Thank you very much. I think I did that in 20, but...
Thank you very much, Emily, for being with us tonight. And we will vote to table this petition. Councillor Rennie, would you like to move? Do I have a seconder? Councillor McCarthy. All those in favour of tabling the petition? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. So we'll now move on to the rest of the agenda now that petitions are finished. So, councillors, we have a large agenda this evening that we need to get through in line with the time limits in our governance rules. And I will be permitting questions of officers prior to the commencement of debate on each item. And if I think sufficient questioning has occurred, I'll exercise my right under the governance rules to limit questions and ask the debate to commence. And there's just one part of the governance rules that I want to point out, which is 4.4, that it's number 1. Prior to the commencement of debate on a motion, including a procedural motion or an amendment, a councillor may, when no other councillor is speaking, ask any questions of officers concerning or arising out of the motion for the purposes of clarification. A councillor may not ask a question of officers once debate has commenced on a motion. So councillors, just want to remind you of that before we start debate on our items. This is 4.4.1 in the governance rules. Thank you. So we will now go on to item 9, which is consideration of reports. And the first report we have to consider this evening is 9.1, the ICT and digital strategy, including the ERP investment. And we have Anna and Lolita here tonight to answer questions. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers regarding this item? Councillor Greco. And just a reminder that questions are for clarification purposes.
Thank you, Mayor. I just seeking some clarification about why we're considering this report as now and not part of the actual budget process, where normally budget allocations are considered as part of the budget deliberation process. So could I please have an answer to that?
Yes, over to you, Anna and Lolita.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Greco. As part of the long-term financial plan, Council agreed to map out the investment in this infrastructure, this IT project, and there is a big piece of work to be undertaken in terms of procurement, and the budget will come from 24-25, but the preparatory work would go ahead now so that we could hit the ground running.
I have a further question.
Two other questions. The other question is that given this new process where the allocation is occurring before the budget deliberations, would that mean that if we vote for this tonight, that will lock in our 2024-2025 budget the allocation that we're making tonight? Plus, will it lock in the future council after the next election?
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Greco. Yes, it would lock us in because it is in the long-term financial plan, but also I think it's important to note that it's not an option of either $36 million that we decide tonight or nothing. If Council does decide not to vote for this tonight, we would still need to invest around $31 million over the next 4 years just to prop up, I guess, our systems, which are around 20 years old, and we would need to, I guess, keep those systems alive. We call it life support, and there isn't a guarantee that our vendors would continue to support our current systems, even if we did invest that $31 million, so there could be further investment as well. So there is a risk involved in the status quo, which still is a big investment of $31 million.
Thank you.
And just my final...
Councillor Greco, I'll go to Peter, our CEO, for an extra response.
Thank you, Mayor. Just through the Mayor and to aid with transparency, I'll just add to Anna's answer, if I may. So, yes, it will lock in the $500,000. Importantly, the recommendation also notes the investment, the projected investment for the next 3 or 4 years after next budget. So it locks in the $500,000, but also those milestones and those annual investment decisions will come back to Council over a $36.4 million project. Those numbers will move around, so they need to, whilst you're committing to the $500,000 now and the 36.4, there'll be an annual process for the council as part of their budget process to put into the forthcoming budget the money needed for this program. So it'll be locked in, but there'll be annual decisions by council as part of the budget process. Just to add to why it needs to happen now, there's a lot of risk with these investments, and setting up for that procurement properly in the next 3 months is really critical so that we can get the resources on board to set up the probity, governance, and set the procurement process up. It's not a short procurement process because we want to get absolutely the right vendors for council to work with us over a 4-year period. And setting up now enables us to go ahead with confidence ahead of the 24-25 budget to put in place some of those internal resources we need so that we can undertake that quite lengthy procurement process in 24-25.
Thank you, Mr Smith. Councillor Greco,
And just a final question, if I may, just for clarification. I understand that the total project is about $34.5 million. What provisions have been made in order to ensure that we contain the overall spend to that and that there's not a massive overspend? Because my understanding is that these types of projects are very much prone to overspend, which will obviously have an impact on expenditure in relation to other community services.
Thank you. Anna and Lolita.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. To your question, when we're looking at the investment of $36.44 million for this program over the next 4 years, there's various factors that has been considered, and this cost is directly towards the technical partners, delivery partners, to do a proper process re-engineering to work on. And there's also a fair bit of contingency that's been placed on. If you're looking at where did we derive that number from, we have looked into the sector through an independent external analysis as well for the various organizations who have conducted a similar program or programs across Victoria and taken that as an independent advice through multiple channels.
Thank you. Councillors, do we have any other questions before we go to the debate? No. Okay, councillors, we will move to the debate, and I remind you that once we enter the debate there'll be no further questions. Do we have a mover for this item? Councillor Hannan. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Hannan, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I should say I wanted to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
Quite a long recommendation. I'll let the staff put that up. But I wanted to make the point that this is a very significant decision for Darebin Council to be taking at this time. This is where we take a significant step towards protecting the privacy and data of our residents, staff and businesses. It's where we improve the efficiency of our services, make sure our systems are secure and up to date, well connected and user friendly, and enable council to make better decisions and better use of ratepayers' funds. The strategy sets, the report and the strategy sets out well the case for why an overhaul of Darebin's digital systems is essential and why we need to act now. The strategy commits a very significant investment of an expected $34.4 million over future years, starting with $500,000 to begin the procurement process next financial year, as we've just heard. I just wanted to emphasise that doing nothing is not an option here. And as we've just heard, that the cost may be almost as high if we don't take this step and have to keep the current system on life support with short-term fixes. It's important to note that this investment will be approved in stages with each budget and each year, and with the opportunity to review and update the strategy as required. And following on from Councillor Greco's questions, to make sure that the spend doesn't blow out the budget and is contained. I commend the officers on a huge amount of work that's gone into this strategy, and I commend it to all councillors to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hannan. I'll go to Councillor Lawrence as seconder.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Newton. Actually, I'd just like to frame this, because obviously these are some big numbers we're talking about, but these are very central numbers that this council's been planning for some time, actually under the leadership of Councillor Williams. So I'll just take people back to the response from the Monitor's report. Apart from the colour and movement that we so often provide, there were some serious matters about the financial sustainability of this council. And a number of things were highlighted by the Minister and the Monitor. Now, I may debate some. There was issues about office accommodation. There was issues about the IT here. But we made a commitment to the Minister around those things. We also made a commitment last year to do the biggest cut to capital works budget in the history of this council. And even though this council is robust, it was $227 million budget, it's no small council, we were able to save over a 3-year capital works. We've still got to keep that up, that discipline up, $60 million on capital works. So when we go into doing this, this is not throwing money around. As you can see, just maintaining the current band-aids on the 20-year-old systems. And, you know, I'm grateful some other officers kept those band-aids there and it's all been going fine. But there comes a point where you've got to confront the IT infrastructure of this place. The cupboard's bare. So I'm happy to support this. Obviously, I'd like the 80,000 on the homeless somewhere, anyway, IT companies, but, you know, state governments. But we do have to make these serious decisions because it was part of our budget consideration and part of our response to the Monitor's report and to the initial Minister's report. Now, I know we've changed ministers, but we need to stick to course, and we're working from home and everything. IT is going to be the basis of all service and all moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Have we got further speakers to this item? Councillor McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor. Councillor Hannan and Councillor Lawrence have covered a number of the issues that are before us today. What I wanted to focus on was actually the importance of this decision now and why it's valuable for Council to make this decision now so that we can start to reap the benefits of this program of works in a timely way. And I mean that because when you invest in a planning process, as is outlined, and if Council does support this tonight, that will commence the procurement process. And the procurement process, which is provides the inclusion of $500,000 to get moving in relation to identifying technology and delivery partners, is critical to get to the next stage. So the sooner we move on this, the sooner we start to see the integration of a whole range of systems. And I think it's really important that we name the problem here, which is that councils deliver, in some cases, around 100 different services. Those services rely on a range of different software platforms and systems that were never designed to speak with each other. And so you may contact council and you speak to our customer service team and you have that conversation about the issue via the phone or through email about an issue that's happening in your life, in your street, in your community. And council then has to, because we have different systems, then sometimes copy and paste that information into a different software program. I'm taking you through this because it's really important to understand that there is a whole lot of unfulfilling work involved there in that process, but that is just one of the many examples that councillors are aware of, and I think our community deserves to be aware of. The problem we are trying to solve here is excessive handling of information through multiple systems. We don't want our council officers copying and pasting information from one software platform to another. We want them doing the great work they were trained to do in the community, and that's what this is about. So yes, it's a potentially $5.5 million over 4 years investment, but it sets this organisation and our community up for much more efficient focus and delivery of services, and we want ratepayers' money to be spent on those things and not copying and pasting information. I'll end it there, Mayor, and I fully endorse the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Have we got further speakers to the item? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor Newton. Look, I've got no doubt about the need for us to update our computer systems. There's no question about that. So I'm not going to enter into a debate about all that sort of matter. What concerns me is that we've pulled this project out of the normal budgetary process and making a decision here tonight and not considering this in the totality of what council does in relation to the other services that we provide. So, and I think that it would have been more opportune and more appropriate and more in keeping with our practice of considering major budget items within an overall budget context. I think that's fundamental. We know the benefits that this will bring, and they've been articulated. But also, we know that as part of our budget, there are many other idle assets in our community that also need attention. So by isolating this issue and making a decision about this, then doesn't juxtapose the various concerns that are affecting our community. We're saying that we're doing this for the benefit of our community, but there are idle assets, particularly in the northern part of our city, that have been sitting idle for decades. And we're not treating those in the same way that we may have treated this. So all I'm saying, as a result of this, I would have preferred a process where we would have considered this issue amongst all the other budgetary concerns that we have and the long-standing and urgent budgetary concerns, so that we could make a balanced decision. I feel that we're not doing that. I feel that we're giving this some sort of precedence over all the other issues, as if it's the most critical issue. It may be a critical issue, but if you talk to the community out there, they have other critical issues that the council needs to service. And my other concern is that I don't feel that I've received a satisfactory answer about how this project will be contained from a cost blowout perspective. Why I say that, and I'll finish very quickly, is that because then it impacts on the provision of other services or the realisation of other assets or the activation of other assets. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Do we have further speakers to the item? Councillor Williams.
I too would rather have money put towards Reservoir Leisure Centre or another project. However, we are in a position that the situation that this council has been doing has been putting it off year after year. We've now found ourselves in a situation that we need to protect our residents as much as possible. As we already know, that there's a lot of identity theft happening throughout, not just here in Australia, but around the world. And we have an obligation to protect our residents' identities and to ensure that in protecting those sensitive details that 160,000 residents put in our hands, their identifications. I think it's also important to note that with this upgrade, it's not going to be one whole upgrade in one hit. It's going to be over a period of time. So when each section needs to be upgraded, it will come to council and it will be voted on. And in doing that, at least it will have a report will come to council, and councils will have a greater idea of exactly what they're putting their money towards. The other thing is that doing this upgrade will also give residents the experience which will be more efficient for the residents to have that experience, so they can get on the website, they can download live, correct information and services, especially from our planning department. There's nothing worse when you want to know about a plan application, but you can't download it because the details are not there, or council hasn't been able to download major megabytes into the system. So you'll be able to have all that. You might want to find out when your bin's getting collected, if your bin falls on a day like Good Friday. The other thing is that staff will be able to spend more time with our most vulnerable people who do not have access to the internet, because it frees them up so they will not be spending time on answering all those other type of questions of when your bin's going to get collected, because there'll be customers that will be able to see that live on the system at the time. So as I said, I'd love to put it towards something else, but there's a whole range of reasons why we have to do this.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Have we got further speakers on this item? Councillor Sino, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to remind my fellow councillors what the Minister said. The Minister wants us to invest in infrastructure. So I'd like to point that out, number one. Number two, I know there's many councillors here who've been in the Audit Risk Committee. I know Councillor Hannan and Councillor Williams and also the Mayor and myself have been on that Audit Risk Committee, and even Councillor Rennie. And we have discussed our antiquated IT infrastructure. Yes, it's a lot of money, but I think that's a sign of the times in terms of what we need to do. Darebin's system is antiquated. We're delivering antiquated customer service because we don't have the infrastructure to ensure that we have the finger of our pulse in terms of what's happening in our community, in terms of what the resident wants now in terms of our website, in terms of the information that's been stored, in terms of service delivery and service provision. We need to have that. We need to have the finger on our pulse on that. We don't have to have 20 CRMs to try and find something. This is about efficiencies. This is about sensitive data being safe. And this is about also creating and capturing the right employees to come work at Darebin. We don't want being unproductive on a daily basis because the infrastructure is delayed causes so much angst and anxiety. Not only does it cause it, and you just in your own normal workplace. This is about efficiencies. This is about the antiquated methods that we're using to be diluted and getting up with the times. I know it's a lot of money, and I know there are other areas of the municipality that need that capital injection, but we've got our hands tied, and this is unfortunately where we need to go. And I'm hoping we remember what the Minister told Darebin Council. It's been tabulated, and we need to get the infrastructure up to date.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Are there any further speakers to the item? No. Councillor Greco, can I check, were you speaking for or against in your debate? Sorry, I need to check about whether the mover has a right of reply. So I was wondering if you spoke for or against the item.
I'll be abstaining, so it's neither for or against.
Let me just check governance on that. Thank you. I've checked governance advice, and an abstention does mean that there is a right of reply. But as chair, I also have the opportunity to speak just before the right of reply. So very much in support of this item. It's a long time coming. I really want to thank Lolita and his team, but also Anna and Carolyn for getting us to this point. This is something where it's absolutely a large investment, but if I think about what's going to happen over the next few years, what staff will be freed up to do. Exactly as Councillor Williams said, there are people in our community that don't use the internet, and this will free up time for staff to serve them even better than they do now. It's going to connect all the different services that we have. We've got 100 different services that we look after at Council. Aged care particularly, it's going to be a really big boost for that. And I'm really excited to see how these processes are implemented and how much better the service will be from the community. So to anyone listening, this is going to make a real difference in the customer service that you experience from Darebin, and we're really looking forward to the years ahead. But I'll go over to Councillor Hannan for your right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just add a few words. I really understand and respect Councillor Greco's point about considering major budget items in the totality of the budget. That's usually what we do, and that is good practice. Is what we should do. I would just say that we as council have ultimate control of budget decisions. It's our power and it's our discretion to make budget decisions outside of the regular cycle, and we only do so for really quite exceptional and significant needs, and this is in that category. This is not a whim, this is something we've been working towards for months, and we've been briefed several times, and as we've heard from our staff, we need to move ahead. We need to move ahead to get the procurement process going. So I'm comfortable on this case to make such a commitment. And I just wanted to touch on some of the other needs. We've heard a number of different problem cases, or what is the problem we're trying to solve here. We've heard about systems that don't speak to each other, general inefficiencies. There's a few more that we could add to the list, and they're in the report. A fundamental problem is that the systems may actually stop, like service continuity. We are subject, just as any other large organisation, to attacks. Privacy attacks, people's data getting leaked, but massive attacks to actually shut down our business, which has huge financial implications. Another one is the chance to remain credible in the aged care services sector. As we know, Commonwealth contracts are requiring increasingly high levels of sophistication in terms of payroll, finance, HR systems and client support systems. We won't even be in the race to put in a tender, let alone to be able to implement and deliver services to the standard required unless we have much better IT systems in place. Thank you.
Time. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hannan. I'll put this item to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Hannan, Councillor Rennie, Councillor Williams, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Newton, Councillor Messina. All those against? And all those abstaining? Abstaining. Thank you, Councillor Greco. So I declare that motion carried. And we will now go on to 9.2, the governance report for March 2024. Councillors, do you have any questions of the officers on this item? No. Okay. Do I have a mover of this motion? Councillor Rennie. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Rennie, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe we can keep this one extremely short, noting that the governance report tonight is somewhat shorter than it often is, and in fact there's 4 key things that we're noting. They include the summary of attendance at advisory committee meetings and councillor briefings. I think this is useful for the community to know what councillors have been doing and discussing. There are reports by mayors and councillors, which equally are an opportunity for the community to see the sorts of activities that councillors have engaged in. We're noting responses to public question time, and also there's a brief note about actions that we're undertaking in relation to the Darebin annual community survey update. We did recognise there were some areas of concern there, and the report does note that work to address those is ongoing. So I commend the report to everyone and hope that we can pass it fairly quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor McCarthy.
I'll reserve my right, Mayor.
Thank you. Have I got any further speakers on this item? No. Councillor McCarthy, would you like to speak?
Happy to put it to the vote.
Thank you, and I appreciate the quickness. So, councillors, I'll put this item to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll go on to 9.3. This is the outdoor dining and trading policy and design guidelines. Councillors, do we have any questions of the officers on this item? No. Do we have a mover on this item? Councillor Messina and Councillor Hannan, are you happy to second?
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Messina.
I know there's a proposed amendment that's been circulated. I just want to address that now, and I'm just wondering if an officer can explain the word encouragement in the proposal that's been circulated. Do we do that now, or do we wait for the amendment?
Yes, I think let's go now because the amendment's been circulated. So I'll go over to Valley and Kylie. Thank you. So Valley, we've got a question about the word encouragement in the potential amendment. What does that mean? Thank you.
So when people contact us to find out about business approval style business concierge services, we deal with cases one-on-one. So individuals, we will be personally advocating and encouraging and recommending strongly that people who are interested in installing outdoor dining, of which heating is critical and important to help those businesses survive in winter months. So we'll be verbally recommending. We'll also be editing the policy to strongly advocate and recommend for the sustainably kind of sensitive electricity rather than gas, heating elements that are used. But we freely understand that many businesses don't have infrastructure. Many businesses are really feeling it right now and will struggle to afford to install the electricity required for electric-based heating. There are rechargeable heating patio style available, but they're quite expensive and not as affordable at gas right now. So it will be hard for many businesses to afford it.
Through you, Mayor, just to add, also through the development of the economic development strategy, Council will also look at ways, or it's proposed, if Council were to move forward with this amendment, to encourage Darebin businesses to minimise their environmental footprint, but also to future-proof their businesses to the impacts of climate change. So that would be another element should Council wish to consider that amendment.
Thank you, Valley and Kylie. Councillor Senior, did you have further questions on the item or the amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Valley. Thank you, Kylie. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Senior, can I confirm, are you moving the officer's recommendation or the officer's recommendation with the proposed amendment?
I'm going to allow Councillor Hannan's amendment to go through. We have discussed it, and I'm happy to second that amendment.
Okay. So just process-wise, did we want to move that as an alternative motion, Councillor Messina, or did you want to?
I'll refrain and allow Councillor Hannan, since described it.
Sure. Okay, let me check. Councillor Hannan, did you want to move an alternative motion?
Yes, please, Mayor, and I appreciate Councillor Messina supporting that.
Thank you. And Councillor Messina, do you want to second that?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mayor.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Hannan, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'd like to move the slightly amended motion as up on the screen there, and I thank officers for the advice just given about clarifying what that means, that the encouragement of sustainable heaters. Just to take a step back from that, so this is the Darebin outdoor dining and trading policy. What it's about is giving effect to the local laws and state legislation and providing really clear and simple guidance for businesses about outdoor trading, as well as giving council very clear decision-making framework for when the applications come in and we have to evaluate them, or officers have to evaluate them. And overall, it's about activating our public footpaths and achieving a balance of commercial purposes and supporting our local businesses at the same time as ensuring safety and accessibility of footpath users. So I think this is a great policy. I think it will go a long way to ensuring more foot traffic and different types of engagement and providing ongoing support for local business. It's really a well set out guide. It's got some great graphic design, some really clear pictures. I'd encourage anyone to have a look at it. It sets out really clearly what things do you need a permit for, what is permitted and what's not, how do you apply, how much does it cost. It incorporates something that we've discussed recent times, and I appreciate previous councillors' motions on the topic of parklets. Parklets being how we refer to on-street trading. There's an overall plan for the number of parklets in each activity centre, as well as case-by-case considerations in relation to issues such as footpath width, public transport, accessibility, etc. The fees are quite reasonable, and there is an obligation to maintain parklets to a certain safety standard. As noted in the motion, there's a transition period and a grace period for businesses with existing permits. And in line with Darebin's climate emergency policy, a strong preference for the use of sustainable heaters or blankets rather than gas, and the council will support businesses to adopt this, drawing on available assistance. And I just really look forward to the day that we could walk or ride or drive down High Street, Station Street, Edward Street, Broadway, and see streets full of thriving businesses, active people, and zero emissions, zero pollution to the local environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hannan. Councillor Messina, would you like to speak as seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hannan. I just think we just got voted. High Street, Melbourne just voted. Inner North just named the coolest street in the world by the Time Out magazine. And that's because it's a reflection of, number one, the people that come to Darebin, number two, the businesses that keep that thriving economy, and number three, the support that we give our thriving businesses. The economic development team, I want to thank you for this policy. It's actually pretty cool in itself. I'll use that word because that's the word that we were given for the street. But this is about encouraging a vibrant economy. This sets the parameters of what we think will extend that footprint. This is about the community coming along and visiting our thriving economy. it's a great policy. This is about placemaking. Placemaking is something that urban Melbourne needs more of, and this is a start of what it can be and what I hope Darebin will be in the future. The word piazzas, the word placemaking is something that many overseas cities and municipalities undertake. So I hope this is a start of it actually coming into more and more fruition. We've had so much success with some of the festivals, the Northcote Rise, the Fuse Festival, and the 86 Festival. This is about setting a space that creates that vibrant, thriving economy, and I'm hoping that we see more of it and we see more placemaking in Darebin, and I'm looking forward to some of the traders coming along the journey in terms of encouraging that transition from electricity to gas. Sorry, the other way around. I'm sorry, I said it the other way around. Got some noise in the background, so apologies for that. But I think this is the start of placemaking, and I look forward to seeing more of it in our city and keeping it thriving. So looking forward to what the community thinks. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Messina. Very well said. I'll go on to ask if there's any other councillors that would like to speak to this item. No, I'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, and thank you to the team. We will go on to 9.4, Reservoir Leisure Centre, high-level costs, funding strategy options and next steps. Councillors, do we have any questions for this item? Sorry, no questions. Do we have a mover? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor Newton. I have an alternate motion that I'd like to move. It's been submitted to the officers. Hopefully it will come up on the screen for all of us to see.
Can we get that on screen, please? Thank you. Is that your alternative motion, Councillor Greco?
Just let me have a quick look at it. Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for the alternative motion? Councillor Rennie. Councillor Greco, would you like to speak to the item?
Thank you, Mayor Newton. Look, I really welcome the work that's been done on this report, and I'm glad that it came back to us so quickly. I think the report actually gives us some good data, high-level data in terms of the costings associated with such a big project and such an important project, and a much-needed project for the northern suburbs of this city. What the report articulates is it makes an emphasis on the difficulty that we're going to have with funding in funding such a major project, and over the time span that we need to look at to secure that funding to ensure that the project can go ahead. In my view, I think 10, 12 or 15 years is far too long for a project like this. If you think of it in terms of council terms, that'll be another 3 council terms. We will not even be around. I think we need to give some thinking, some thought to how that time could be shortened. I know that's not a very easy thing to do, but that's why I've put that third part there in the motion, where we start to explore now opportunities for future funding in terms of helping us to move this project along, and also seeking assistance from either the state or federal government in helping us to move this project along. This project, the Reservoir Leisure Centre, it's a really no-brainer. It ticks all the boxes. We've got a population that is increasing in the northern suburbs. Reservoir is one of the biggest, if not the biggest suburb in Melbourne. The socioeconomic demographics demand something like this. So it's really a no-brainer. Where we need to apply ourselves in how to actually try and achieve this. And I feel that what this project has done, what this report has done, has actually helped us to better understand obviously the difficulties. Now, what the motion therefore does is that it recognises the report that's come to us, But also, if you look at point 3, it basically says that we need to embark on the scoping project, which has already been funded and has already been decided on by council, and that should proceed and should proceed immediately. That's why I've inserted the word there in second point, that should be proceed immediately. Once we do that and we go out to the community in an open, honest and transparent manner about what their expectations would be for a new reservoir leisure centre, and we get that information, and that I understand there's going to be an engagement officer that's going to be employed to do that work, so that we can actually get a true sense from our community of what their expectations are in regards to a new reservoir leisure centre. Once we get that information, according to the report, that will come back to us around about October, November, when many of us may not be here by then, but that will actually help to inform, as the third point says there, the scoping study will actually help to inform the design phase of the project. And in the design phase of the project, we should make an attempt to actually seek funding from outside sources, particularly state and federal sources. We know that these projects during elections, that they could be supported. There is a political dimension to this, and we should not shy away from that. And hopefully we'll be able to gain some support in relation to moving from the scoping stage to the concept design stage. So I'll just leave it at that. The report's self-explanatory, and I'm hoping to get unanimous support for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Councillor Rennie, would you like to speak to the item?
I'll reserve, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, I'd like to support the motion, obviously. Reservoir swimming pool was very important public access to saunas and swimming for me in my fight against stage 4 cancer. So however people like to put down reservoir, it's still a place of survival for me and healing, but it can be much better. I just note the whole notion of external funding approaches. I hope that that's very broad. I'd like to point out in the North East Ward, the City of Banyule has done leveraged $2 or $3 million investments and created massive sports capacity with La Trobe Uni that services the whole city and became the home of Matilda's in Darebin. So I would just like to say we often have this dialogue of, there's a 25-metre pool above Bell Street, nothing else. We forget there's a 25-metre pool in La Trobe Uni. So I think, obviously, state and federal governments are good sources of promises, especially, I think, somewhere in the western suburbs got promised an extra outdoor 50-metre pool to complement their indoor 50-metre pool. So elections are like that. But there could be, I hope we're looking at cross-council, other partnerships and opportunities, because yes, we do have 2 25-metre sites that service the community above Bell Street.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Do we have further speakers on the item? Councillor Williams.
Speech, I can't read it, I'm going blind. Thank you. For over a decade, it's believed that Reservoir Leisure Centre has been stuck in a bureaucratic limbo, and I don't blame the community members and the users of the centre that feel this way. As the North Central Ward Councillor representing the catchment of Reservoir Leisure Centre, I share their frustration. It is disheartening to learn that the rebuild of Reservoir Leisure Centre won't even begin until 2034. That is another decade away. The community has a voice, and they have voiced their concerns to me. They have the feelings of being neglected and left behind, particularly for those residing north of Bell Street, missing out on crucial facilities like indoor sports arenas, such as the Nurrungerry Stadium, multi-purpose sporting clubs like Darebin Falcons has. And they feel that why is it that one area is flourishing while other parts of Darebin are thriving, and they feel they're left behind. Every resident does deserve to feel that they are being treated equally regardless of their social and financial status. However, Reservoir has the highest amount of people living with a disability, living under the poverty line, homeless, single parenting, hard-working labourers, mental health issues than any other suburb in Darebin. It worries me to think that what would $62 million is what we've spent for NARC would be in 10 years' time, especially when we're considering the rising cost of living and tradespeople. Makes me think that council will struggle to gather any funds or secure external funding, even be given significant financial, considering the financial constraints. I feel that the community and the council urgently need to require support from all local, federal MPs to address the issue and to ensure that there is a tangible progress. This council needs commitment and funding from all levels, and including partnerships, all the way through from concept design to construction, will be the only way to ensure it gets built and Reservoir community members have access and to go to something that they're proud of, but to be in an area that will be a draw card for them.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. So we got further speakers to the item. Councillor Hannan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak in support of this motion. I think it's important to keep progressing this work, even though, as set out well in the report, the financial reality is that we're doing this work now with a view to a longer term, could be as far as 10 years away before work is undertaken. But it's important to keep things moving and to build on the previous work that has been done. And one thing that I commend in the approach that's set out in the report is that it will build on previous work and acknowledges that we're not starting from a blank page here. I'd like to recognise there's been years of work undertaken actually by staff into the needs and preferences of the community, the physical condition of RLC and financial options to redevelop the facility. There was a condition audit in 2018. There's a feasibility study in 2019, including consultation with 700 people in 9 local schools. I'd just make a short note on that it's often misquoted. We heard in my view, a misquote of that report today, and I would encourage anyone with an interest in this topic to read the feasibility study, and particularly what arose out of that, which was the RLC Health and Wellbeing Study, which engaged a multidisciplinary team across council with the Department of Public Health at La Trobe Uni to consider how investment in the centre could enhance health, wellbeing and socioeconomic outcomes for the community. And in April 22, Council passed a really comprehensive vision for the health and wellbeing of the area. And on that basis, I commend moving ahead with the scoping study. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hannan. Have we got any further speakers? Councillor McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor. I think it's really important when we are thinking about both this report tonight and the proposed path forward, which I support, but also how we think more generally about investment in our facilities, that we keep in mind that what an aquatic and recreation centre is today and what we need it to be in 10 years' time can be different questions. So what it is today is that it services a number of needs that actually were identified some time ago, but it doesn't service a range of needs that we know exist right now and will continue to exist over the coming decade and in fact well into the future. And I say that because in terms of the level of investment that the report refers to, this is actually unprecedented investment, what's described here. There is no project in Darebin Council's history, as far as I'm aware, where that level of capital investment is being committed. And I say that because the value and cost of doing work in 10 years from now obviously is going to increase, we know that. But what we also know is that if we are going to do a redevelopment of RLC, and that project is going to take off and is going to land in that decade from now, we just have to look at the level of work that went into NARC, which it was a story of over 10 years, to get it right. So that means not making the mistake of thinking that we know all the answers right now about what we will need, not just 10 years, but 20 years, 30 years and 40 years from now, because these are significant intergenerational facilities. So I'm pleased, and it feels like Council is going to get unanimous support for the recommendation before us, and I hope that is the case. Because I know that every single councillor in this room wants to see our community, no matter which part of the city they live in, no matter which facilities they access, have access to those facilities that our community will need. Not just now, not just in the timing of elections, but in fact for decades to come. And that's what I think this report continues to take us to. I commend the work of our officers in getting us here.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Are there any further speakers to the item? No. I'll go back to Councillor Rennie as the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to particularly commend all the staff who have been involved in putting this report together. I think it contains a lot of very helpful information, and thank you to Councillor Greco for moving the motion and for your ongoing passion. I'd really like to refer people to the table in the report, which I think is particularly informative, Table 1 and Table 2, which outline the type of steps involved in the development of a facility like this. And I think this is incredibly important so people understand the complexities and the detail and level of work that goes into it. Noting that Table 1 has Council establishing a project governance group almost immediately. So I think as soon as this decision has been made, that process will begin. That'll lead to the procurement process for an engagement consultant. There'll be further work in that sphere, and then some quantity surveying. So quantity surveying is more detailed work, actually understanding how costing for a project like this can be developed. All of that takes quite a lot of time, and then, towards the end of the year, a report will come back to Council. Just as it was very incremental for the Northcote Aquatic and Recreation Centre, this will be a very incremental project. It will take time. There's no escaping that, and I think that we see that when we take our time with a project like we did with NARC, we get quite an exceptional outcome, and I'm sure that everyone in Darebin is looking forward to something similar one day for Reservoir. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Just before we go to the vote, certainly from my perspective, I believe that all councillors really, really want to see the best outcome for Reservoir Leisure Centre. When that is, we're not 100% sure yet, but we know from previous consultation that residents are particularly keen on more hydrotherapy, more learn to swim pools. There's a real health and wellbeing aspect that's important in Reservoir, and East Reservoir particularly, that I'm really excited about. But the reality is, with budget pressures, that it's absolutely worth looking into partnerships, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the report comes back to, and I commend the work as well. So thank you to Mel and Kylie and the team. So, councillors, we will put this one to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, we will go on to the next item, which is 9.5. This is the extended e-scooter trial participation, City of Darebin's options. So, councillors, do we have any questions on this item? Before we go to questions, just noting that there is a officer's amendment that is recommended. So if we have any questions on that, now's the time to ask as well.
Mayor, would it be possible to get that up on the screen?
Yes. Governance team, could we please get the officer's recommendation for an alternative motion on the screen, please? So the one on the screen is an officer recommendation. Vanessa, is that correct?
Thank you, Mayor. That's correct.
Thank you. Do we have questions on the officer recommendation? Vanessa?
I'm so sorry, Mayor. It is the officer amended recommendation, also incorporating a councillor amendment as well.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's good to clarify that. So, do we have any questions on what's on the screen? Councillor Hannan.
Sorry, Mayor, I haven't really had a chance to look at this until now, but just on item 3, it says receives a further report to consider implementation model in the event that council resolves to participate in the scheme. I take it that should be 2024-25 budget. I think there's a typo there.
Yes, I'm sure the team can clarify that. So 24-25.
But my question is, just to be clear, that it's a bit hypothetical. It's a step ahead. If it's approved in the budget, then the further report is an implementation model, not then deciding whether to proceed or not. I just wanted to make sure about that. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's worth clarifying. So I think it's really a question about process. So is it with point 3, is it if it's approved in the budget, then a report happens?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, thank you for your question, Councillor Hannan. Yes, so councillors, should you decide to proceed through your budget deliberations this year to allocate funding to start a trial, we'd recommend that we come back to you with a further report which will explore implementation considerations. And councillors, the reason why I've put this amendment forward is it does actually allow us more time to explore more implementation options and to bring that back to you if you do decide to proceed.
Thank you. Do we have further questions on the alternative motion? No. Councillors, would anyone like to move the... Oh, Councillor Lawrence, do you have questions?
Quick one, just so micro-mobility, that means e-scooters, is it?
Alan, over to you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Lawrence. Through you, Mayor. Micromobility can be read in this report as e-bikes and e-scooters as a micromobility class of transport.
Thank you. Did you have further questions?
That clarifies it. Just looks different here.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy?
Sorry, Mayor, I've only just seen the amendment when it's come up on the screen. The question I have is the point at which council would make a decision. Council will vote on its budget. Council will put forward its proposed budget. If I'm correct in understanding that there is the consideration of an allocation towards this, so if that allocation is included, then council then does the work subsequent to that. Just wanting to understand the decision-making process, because I'm really eager for us to explore this seriously and to understand the benefits and the challenges, but I'm really wanting to understand where we are in the decision-making process, because it feels like we're deferring this into a budget process and then doing the detailed work afterwards. I just want to get clarity if that's where we are.
Thank you. Vanessa?
Thank you for your questions, Councillor McCarthy. So this report is in response to a council resolution that resulted due to a notice of motion, which required us to bring to you a report that explored micro-mobility. So what we would need to do in addition to this is further work to explore implementation and bring that back to you. So I'm recommending that if council did want to proceed with a scheme in the next financial year, the next step in the process is, in addition to this informative report, is to do some further detailed report on how we'd implement it for Darebin, unique to Darebin, and we would then bring that back to council to explore those factors as a part of delivering the program, should you wish to proceed.
Thank you, Vanessa. Have we got any further questions? No. Can I confirm, has Councillor Messina left the meeting? Thank you. I'll just confirm that, Councillor Messina has left the meeting. And We'll now go on to, would anyone like to propose this? Councillor McCarthy?
Happy to move the motion.
Thank you. As an alternative motion on the screen?
Yep, that's fine.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Rennie to second. Councillor McCarthy, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Mayor. To some extent, it feels a bit funny moving this motion and considering this item in the way that we are, having seen these schemes in operation in other cities around Australia and seeing, and in fact in other parts of Melbourne, where they succeed, where they fail, where they clearly need some work. So I don't have a problem with us taking our time to do this and do this well, and there would be nothing worse than for Darebin to go down the path, and I think our community would be rightly annoyed if we went down the path of not getting the specifications right. Because when you don't get the specifications right with a program like this or a scheme like this, the impact is felt in the amenity. But in saying that, and the amenity is literally the e-scooters, currently on our borders, on our boundaries, the technology that we don't have but others have, and it just can't make it over the border. But in saying all that, the benefits to micromobility, the extraordinary improvement to mobility and the affordability of some of these schemes is something that we can't walk past, and we need to look at them seriously. We need to look at e-bikes, we need to look at scooters, we need to look at the technology, but we also need to look at the functionality and the usability for our community and those people for whom are wanting to actually get rid of a vehicle, get rid of a car, or can't afford a car, may in fact be interested in these options but can't afford them themselves, and so want to access such a scheme. So there are significant benefits that can be reaped for our community, and particularly those who are, whether it's through choice or through affordability, are actually denied access to other forms of transport. We have to recognise that in some parts of Darebin we are very blessed to have great public transport, but that's not the case across the board. And in fact, I would say that whilst some people might think this is something that will take off in the more southern parts of Darebin, I suspect that we will see significant uptake in the middle and northern parts of Darebin, where we have less public transport in some pockets. In fact, we have significant gaps in some places, and I suspect that this will deliver a great outcome for people. So I'm pleased to support this. I'm also pleased to hear our officers talk about how they think about these processes, the collaborative approach with other councils, and of course aligning with the state government's work in this space as well. I would hope that state government does get clarity around its position and its support for these schemes, because we can't look just to LGAs on their own. And the report does note that on the 5th of April this year, the current trial that's been operating will come to an end. I look forward to the state government putting some investment in this way. From an emissions reduction point of view, this is where our activity needs to be in terms of mobility. Not everyone can ride a bike. Not everyone has access to that. Here is a form of transport that can support more mobility and reduce emissions at the same time. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Rennie.
I'll reserve. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there further speakers on this item? No. Councillor Rennie, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor McCarthy. I'm delighted to support this item, and I think that it's an important step forward in us keeping up with our neighbouring councils. Last week, I rode my e-bike down to Abbotsford on 3 days for training. That involved sort of crossing the Darebin-Yarra border, and of course, when you do that, what you find is a lot of scooters that are left at the border, and people have to then walk their last bit of their journey into Darebin, because the technology on those hire scooters enables the companies to effectively lock them down when they leave Yarra. And I think, interestingly, that's exactly why we should be participating in this, because that reflects the level of control that these companies have over the way in which the scooters are used, the safety mechanisms, the speed, and the maintenance. And those are all things that we can't control when people go purchasing their own scooters. People can tamper with them, people don't necessarily maintain them. So I think we'll get a better product being used in our municipality if we participate in a trial, and I think there's very significant scope to assist our residents to travel to and from public transport hubs without needing to drive their car. So that last kilometre or two that people need to get from Rutherford Station to their house. The scooters are an exceptional opportunity for people to do that. And interestingly, they are, for many people, much more accessible than a bicycle. You can jump on them in your work skirt and your work shoes and use them in that way. And so I think it's a transport revolution, and we want to be part of it. We don't want to be left behind.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor Greco, did you want to speak? You can go ahead.
Just very briefly, I want to thank Councillor McCarthy and Councillor Rennie for supporting my alternate motion. I just wanted to say a few words in relation to it. I think it's important that we get this report back, as has been explained by our officers, because I think the initiative is quite an exciting initiative. It's an initiative that we need to be in that space. And as has been mentioned by Councillor Rennie, our neighbouring council, Yarra Council, and also Melbourne Council and also Ballarat Council is also been engaged in the trial. So it's important that we step into that space, but it's also important that if we want to actually make sure that we're able to sustain it, and the community is able to sustain it, and is also that it's embedded in our transport means in our city, is that we get this report back that details how to implement something like this, so that we can be assured that as we go down the path of ensuring this micromobility, that it comes and then it stays with our city, it becomes a feature of our city. So I'm really excited that we're going to get a report back, and so like that we can enter into this area with our eyes wide open and ensure again that it becomes a part of the infrastructure of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Just before we close debate, I'm very excited about this as well. It was a notice of motion that I moved last year. We talked about it at Metropolitan Transport Forum and also through the M9 as well. I certainly I've seen a lot of e-bikes, e-scooters ending at Yarra that I'm sure would like to come and visit us in Darebin by e-scooter or e-bike, but we haven't given them the opportunity yet. I was certainly testing the limit of my e-bike on Saturday for council events with going from Northcote, Preston, Bundoora, Preston and back to Bundoora, but we made it. And so I very much know day to day how important micromobility is for me to get around as mayor. And I really agree with what's been said previously, that I think there's real potential in the north. So the gaps in public transport where there's not great bus access, there's not great train or tram access, I think it's going to be really interesting if we go ahead to see what the data comes back with about where those journeys are and where people are using that, what's called last mile or that last kilometre. So I'm very excited about this. We just had Ride to School Day last week. I think there's really big potentials there too. So very much looking forward to what this comes back with, and we'll close the debate now. Councillors, all those in favour of this item? Thank you. That is Councillor Hannan, Councillor Rennie, Councillor Greco, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Lawrence, Councillor Newton. All those against and all those abstaining. Councillor Williams, that motion is carried. So we will go on to 9.6, facilitation of major developments by the Victorian Government and proposed introduction of pre-application fees. I think we'll just wait for the staff to come in. Chad, welcome. Thank you. Councillors, do we have questions on this item? No questions. And do we have a motion? Councillor Rennie.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Rennie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. It's actually really disappointing that we find ourselves in this situation, which is a creation of state government arrogance in many respects to think that they can do planning better than councils can. We've got decades of experience. We have an extraordinarily talented team who respond to planning applications. And by and large, we do this efficiently and to achieve good outcomes for our community. So the state government is proposing to enable significant developments of a large size to bypass councils and be determined by state government. There is still, I think, an expectation that council's going to do much of the work, but in fact the fees for lodging these applications will go to the state government, and that's not viable. There are significant costs to councils of missing out on those fees, and with that lack of income, we will not be able, unfortunately, to maintain the same level of diligence when it comes to ensuring that our community and future residents, importantly, get better planning outcomes. That's why this report proposes an alternative way of still making our services, our exceptionally good quality services, available to developers so that they can get council input, but it'll be a user pays type of input. And I think that's absolutely necessary, and if developers then choose to lodge their applications through council, they can recover that. So we're not seeking to double dip, we're simply seeking to make sure that council's time, expertise and resources are recognised with contributions from the development community. I have a suspicion that what will actually happen is that when developers start lodging all of these applications with the state, thinking that it will somehow be quicker, that the state will be just as inundated as councils have been at times, and that as a result of that, the state may be even slower than councils are at times, and then I think the developers will swing back to councils anyway. I know that our community would prefer to have their say and would prefer to have mechanisms for input, and our community actually are the most significant losers. And when I say our community, I'm not just talking about the people who are already in Darebin, I'm talking about future residents. And every future resident who moves into a high density development deserves a really quality home. And that's why our team spend so much time in pre-meetings, in responding to early proposals. It's a fundamental part of getting good outcomes for those future residents. And look, I commend this to everyone. I think it's a reasonable way for council to proceed in this situation, but also I would urge the state government to have a rethink, to share planning fees when they expect the work to be shared, and perhaps we'll come back to a situation where council's significant expertise in this area is recognised.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor McCarthy, would you like to speak to the item?
I'll reserve my right, Mayor.
Sure. Have I got further speakers to this item? Councillor Lawrence.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Rennie covered the detail of this and the actual fallout from it. I mean, this is a product, a smaller product, a smaller aspect of the centralisation of planning that's obviously been underway in Sydney for a long time, and where the transit corridors have fallen away from council jurisdictions and fallen into, state government control. Melbourne's got a funny relationship with centralised planning. Obviously, we had the Melbourne Metropolitan Board of Works. We had privatised trams that eventually morphed into a unified system. We had centralised Melbourne Board of Works, which got blown up when too many politicians got a bit smart about zoning down in Mornington Peninsula. That's one of the aspects of centralisation. And then they blew that up. So for some time we've operated with decentralised planning, for many decades now. It's going to be a cultural shift for many people to have top-down planning. And I suppose it's not without precedence, because obviously Docklands was built without representation and without really objectors' rights, and where the planners and everyone had total control. So I just hope it's not the Docklandsisation of Darebin.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Do we have further speakers? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. May I have an amendment that I'd like councillors to consider, if it could come up on the screen for councillors to see?
Thank you. If we could get that on the screen, that'd be great. Is that the amendment, Councillor Greco? Is that your amendment, Councillor Greco? Is that acceptable to the mover and seconder?
Mayor, I suspect it will be, but I'd just like to hear from our team about whether that is achievable and whether there are any resource
Yes, that's fine. Vanessa, Chad and Neil, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. No, it is completely possible to prepare a report and outlining the risks and benefits of such an approach.
Thank you. I'd love to accept that amendment. Thank you, Councillor Greco.
Thank you. That's now been incorporated into the into the motion. So are there any further speakers?
I'll speak in relation to the substantive motion.
Yes, but you are speaking on the substantive motion, so go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Look, I want to thank the mover and the seconder for accepting my amendment. Look, I just may limit my comments to the amendment, but before saying that, look, what we're seeing is a fundamental change. I think it's a new era for councils in terms of what's been taken away from us, in terms of major planning issues, and in a sense the horse is bolted. It's going to be very difficult for councils to regain that thing. So, and also I think the state government has previous form which we have directly experienced, and that is Preston Market. Preston Market is a typical example of where the state government takes over the project and becomes the responsible authority. Preston Market even went one step further, which was actually dealing with the planning controls, not only the permit application process. So in relation to my specific amendment, given that our community needs to be informed or would like to be still part of the process, I think we owe it to our community to find out a way that even if projects are taken over by the state government, of how our community can have some input into the decision-making channels in the state government. They may be limited, it just may be a question of letters to a minister or things like that, but let's explore that, because I think we owe it to our community, because it's not only a question for council and the impact that it has on council, both financially, etc., but also at the end of the day, we do this work for the benefit of our community. So we owe it to them to explore what possibilities there are, and then how we can engage them and link them into the process, as limited as can be. It's also important for us and to protect us as council, because the community, if they don't understand the new process, will be pointing the finger towards council. So by informing the community, we could actually not only inform them how to make representations, but also to tell them of what the council's area of responsibility is in relation to this space. So I thank the mover and the seconder for accepting the amendment to the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Are there any further speakers on the item? No. Okay, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll go on to 9.7 contract award, but I'll go over to Peter.
Through you, Mayor, this has been withdrawn by myself, but I might seek your leave to get Rachel Olivier just to give a brief explanation so the community understand why it's been withdrawn.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So we have withdrawn this one after late this afternoon identifying essentially a cut and paste issue in one of the confidential attachments. Unfortunately, the nature of that means that the report's not consistent with itself, and on a matter of on a contract, it's important that we essentially sort that out and report it back to you. Certainly, we will bring a report back to council as soon as we can, and there's no change in the substantive recommendation or the advice to council.
Thank you. We really appreciate that transparency. Thank you. So we will go on to, just to confirm, that has been withdrawn by the CEO. So we'll go on to 9.8. CT 202373, the supply and delivery of mobile bins. Do we have any questions about this item? No. Councillors, do I have a mover of the motion? Councillor Rennie, is that the officer's recommendation?
It is, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Rennie, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, thank you. I might just make sure that the staff get the details in there, because there's a blank, and it is to award it to Sulu MGB Australia Pty Ltd, just so that we have that in there.
The team's just working on that.
Thank you. Mayor, I'll kick
Go
off.
for
I
it.
think that's fine. Bins are big business and they're part of our business. So we have to make sure that we have them in good condition and available to every resident across the municipality. And that is a big job because in 1 year, for example, we had just over 3,000 lost or stolen bin requests. That's an average of 250 a month. 5,288 damaged bin requests, averaging 441 a month, and 569 new bin requests, with 2,046 requests for additional bins. And so I think that gives people a sense of the scale of what we need to keep up with. And obviously we would prefer not to have any damaged bins, but you know, we all know that sometimes the truck picks them up, puts them down, a lid breaks off. We're rough with them, and unfortunately sometimes there's criminal damage. So this contract award has been through a rigorous procurement process. There's been some joint procurement to make sure that we establish economies of scale, and I'm really confident that we have a good provider that will ensure that our bins are in excellent condition and available to all.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Councillor McCarthy.
Thanks, Mayor. As a councillor in a council that from time to time gets accused by one of the daily tabloids of not focusing on rates, roads and rubbish, we are absolutely focusing on rubbish tonight. We were going to be focusing 2 items, in fact, on rubbish, but one of them has been deferred, so apologies to that tabloid. But I would say that this is actually not a space that is static. So as councillors would be aware, we had the introduction of FOGO across this city just a couple of years ago. In fact, 2021-22, fabulous success, well-loved service offering, and commendations again to the council team for the implementation. And we will continue to work on trying to get the uptake, more people using their FOGO bins in the way that we would hope. But more bins. More bins if we do go down the path, and we had a question just tonight about the glass bin. Currently we pick up glass through our current contract. We don't need a separate bin, but that may change in the future. And so if we do go down that path of actually having a separate bin, we will have to be looking again at contracts like this. So this is a space that is not static, it is evolving, but it also has, as Councillor Rennie's pointed out, a maintenance component which is significant. And I think most people would be surprised by the big numbers that we deal with here. I don't think there is anything unpleasant or malevolent happening with our bins. I think it's just a case of wear and tear because of the sheer volume. And when you do have, tens of thousands of bins, in fact, I suspect it's probably over 100,000 bins across the city that are at play here, you're likely to have that sort of an attrition rate. So thank you for the officers for their work, and look forward to seeing where we go next on rubbish.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Any further speakers on this item? No, we'll put that one to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, we'll go on to 9.9, Northcote Town Hall Compliance and Rectification Project. Do we have any questions on this item? No. Do we have a mover? Councillor Hannan, are you moving the officer's recommendation? Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Hannan, would you like to speak to the item?
Yes, please, Mayor. So this item is about the rectification of the Northcote Town Hall. In late 2022, Council identified the need to rectify non-compliance at the Town Hall in Northcote. And unfortunately, some functions needed to be ceased until this was resolved. And it's been a real shame to see the building largely out of operation, with a number of events, including Fuse Festival, Speakeasy season having to be relocated, and having to find alternative arrangements for Multicultural Arts Victoria. However, the Town Hall is an important part of Darebin's history and a centre of live art and performances, and it's important to get back into business and to make sure that the building is safe for everyone who uses it. At that initial time, a budget of $200,000 was set aside as part of the current year's capital works budget. This was based on initial information, and as the project has progressed, the costs have been updated. They've been reviewed through an independent quantity surveyor which has confirmed the need for substantial additional funds in the hundreds of thousands of dollars to complete the project. I really want to commend the work of staff to find a way forward with this, because the work needs to get done, and to look across the capital works budget and to find other projects which could be either reduced in cost or deferred, or otherwise find savings to enable this work to go ahead at Northcote Town Hall. All those other projects will still be delivered, and it will have an overall neutral effect on the finances for the current budget. This item is really brought forward for the sake of transparency and being clear with the community, given this a significant change. And again, I'd like to thank the work of the staff and commend this report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCarthy, would you like to speak?
Just quickly, Mayor, as some councillors might know, my first involvement with Darebin City Council was actually on the Northcote Town Hall Community Advisory Committee at the stage as an artist and arts and comedy producer. And so it's kind of nice to be finishing my term of council in a few months' time and know that this place is going to be back up and running in its glory. I do think it's worth noting, and councillors would know, that this is a heritage building, and which means that there are elements to the building and its operation which we need to take great care in. Council has invested, as councillors would also know, significant amount of money over the years, both on the external restoration but also the internal fit out. So we do want the Northcote Town Hall to be up and running. It is the place which obviously was the beacon up on the hill for the former Northcote City. It's the place where the former mayor about over 100 years ago actually turned on electric power. It has a significant role in our city from both a cultural perspective, a historical perspective, and it deserves to be operating and deserves to be delivering all the wonderful things that are outlined in the report. So thank you to our officers for their innovation in finding the money, and thank you also to councillors for getting behind this project, because it is so important. I would also say that there is a significant community of artists and arts producers out there. I've been contacted by some of them already who are desperate to see Northcote Town Hall back up and running, and so I think they'll be really pleased by this. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor McCarthy. Do we have any further speakers on this item? Councillor Greco.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I know that the work is necessary, and as the report points out, we're talking about $200,000. And as is mentioned by Councillor Hannan, as a result, other projects either have not been done or been deferred, or have been somehow we've been able to source competitive pricing in relation to achieving the other project. But I know what I want to make the point of is that the other projects that are now funding the Northcote Town Hall are Improving Road in Reservoir and also Massey Avenue Reservoir, which are drainage projects. We know that often drainage projects get left not lowering the priority, but they're not exactly sexy projects, but they're actually quite necessary work that needs to be done. The only point that I would make is that given that we're going to go through the budget deliberations, it'll be useful for the council to consider how we can make up the extra $200,000 in order to ensure that the reservoir area is not underfunded as a result of the required work and the necessary work that needs to be done at the Northcote Town Hall.
Thank you, Councillor Greco. Are there any further speakers to the item? No. Okay, we'll put this item to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. So we will go on to item 10, items to be tabled. There are none. Item 11, notices of motion. This is unusual. There are no notices of motion to consider tonight. Item 12, urgent business. There's no urgent business. So Our next item 13 is consideration of reports considered confidential. So our one audience member will have to vacate. Thank you. Councillors, there is one confidential report to be considered this evening. It's item 13.1, response to the proposed development of an mRNA facility at Latrobe. So we are required to close the meeting to the public. In accordance with section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020, Council may resolve to close the meeting to members of the public to consider the item designated confidential in accordance with section 3(1) of the Act. Councillors, is there a mover of the recommendation to close the meeting to the public? I saw Councillor Rennie. Do I have a seconder? Councillor McCarthy. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. So I declare the meeting closed to members of the public at 8:50 p.m. and I request officers to cease the live streaming. Thank you to members of the community who've joined us here in the chamber this evening. You've already left. And before we